While the Chicago Bears were not able to secure a trade for Matthew Judon, there's a lot of confidence in the building from both players and the coaching staff on the two young defensive ends that we have in this roster. What do they have left to show? How much will they be able to show in this last preseason game? And will one of them be able to win one of the starting positions on that defensive end? We're going to talk a little bit about that. Plus, we're going to look at some of the players and things to look out for in the Bears' last preseason game. All that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bears Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bears news and content.
What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this for today, y'all. So we got comments from both Eric Washington and Montez Sweat about the two young defensive ends that we have on this roster. We're going to start off with Eric Washington and his comments on Daniel Hardy saying this. It really has stood out as far as what we've been asking the position to do. I don't know anybody who stood out as much as he has. That's kind of big when you look at that, right? When you look at him saying that nobody stood out as much as Daniel Hardy has over the course of 3 preseason games. Daniel Hardy has accumulated 10 tackles, 5 of those tackles being for a loss, 3.5 sacks, and 5 QB hits. When you look at what you're trying to get from that position, right, considering that they're on the opposite side of Montez Sweat, considering that they're hoping that a lot of that interior defensive pressure from Javon Dexter helps put extra pressure on the quarterback and in the running game, I'll say this, that Daniel Hardy's performance so far has been pretty damn good. And while we kind of all knew that, or hoped that the defensive line was going to be able to stand up a big time for this Bears team this season, it is probably the weakest position group, and it's not even that weak of a position group, right? But it is probably the weakest position group on the defensive side of the ball for the Bears. So that's why you saw things like Ryan Poles try to go out and get Matthew Judon. The deal just didn't work out. But as I've said before, is that maybe it didn't work out, and that ends up being the best case scenario for the Bears because they got two young guys that they can take a look at. Now, that does not mean or stop the Bears from, if they're not still getting quite what they want from that position, that they can't go out and try to acquire a player. We've talked about it. The fact of the matter is that the Chicago Bears have $20 million in salary cap space right now that they could use to maintain some flexibility to go out there and be aggressive if they need to get a veteran defensive end or anything. But it may not be the worst thing to start off this season with what we have here so we can truly evaluate those guys. And I'm not going to say that, maybe these guys haven't shown up enough yet to preclude the Bears or say that the Bears just say, hey, no, we don't need anybody. We don't need any vets here. But, it may not be the worst thing to take some time into the season, maybe even up into the trade deadline to see really how these guys develop. Now, if the Bears season gets off to a rocky start, let's say that we're not having success on that defensive line, despite the efforts of Montez Sweat, the growth of Javon Dexter, and we're looking at it and saying, no, we need somebody who's going to bring more pressure from the edge than what these rookies or these young guys are ready to do right now. I don't think that's necessarily the worst thing either. Just, it depends on how the Bears view and Ryan Poles views the situation. But as much as like Eric Washington has talked, Montez Sweat has also talked glowingly about rookie Austin Booker, saying this. He's a tremendous talent, really light years ahead of where a rookie should be. I'm excited for the year and what he brings to the table. He's starting to notice how guys like to block him. He's trying out new moves, and he's just learning the defense and learning how to move faster within it. Those are about the most glowing recommendations that you can get for two young players that are still trying to prove themselves and earn a spot on this roster. And, again, not to say that, well, Daniel Hardy was a chance of being, maybe not making the 53-man roster. I think with this performance now, you kind of have to go with him on the 53-man roster now. The Bears have done weirder things before we've seen other teams do, but Daniel Hardy being 25 years old, an extremely young and raw player, only playing in the 2022 season with the Rams. This is a young guy who has a lot left to prove in the show and has hopefully done a lot of growth and development. And then with Austin Booker, like when the Bears got Austin Booker, I do believe that it was that they eventually saw some starting level impact from Austin Booker. I don't know if they quite even thought he would be where he is right now in the rookie season, albeit through preseason. And we got to see how that's going to continue to develop for him and for the Chicago Bears. But overall, I think that what the Bears have gotten from these two guys has left a lot of questions on what do they decide to do. Do they really go out there and try to add a veteran to it with having to spend assets or whatever it is? Or do they take a roll at the dice and just wait till the start of the season? But let me know what you guys think about this. when you look at Daniel Hardy and Austin Booker's performance, do you still want the Bears to go out there and try to acquire a veteran? Do you think that, hey, if they want a veteran piece, somebody that could be a safety net, maybe go out there and sign Yannick Ngakoue to add back to this team as he's already used to the system, things like that? Or do you think the Bears should give Daniel Hardy and Austin Booker a chance to show what they really have? And then at that point, I mean, of course, it's a risk if you run into the season that maybe some of the other veterans that could be out there could be snatched up by other teams. But do you think that the Bears should do that? Should they give them this opportunity rather than go out there and get a veteran? Let me know what you guys think on that down below. With that said, we know that the Bears' last preseason game is today. There's not really a whole lot of storylines left. There are some, right? As far as, like, of course, the back end of the bench players that we all kind of know aren't guaranteed to get a roster spot. Of course, that's still there. And, Ian Willer, is he going to make the team? Velus Jones, things like that. There are, of course, those type of conversations. But for the most part, a lot of what we've came into the season wondering and questioning is there. Now, I do think that Matt Pryor still may have a chance to win that starting right guard position if Nate Davis just for some reason misplaces his health again. But overall, I think that Coleman Shelton is firmly in there as the starting center. That was one of the position battles we were looking at. I think the running back 2 battle because of Roshan, whether not being healthy or whatever, that's gone away. Khalil Herbert's probably going to be that running back 2. The quarterback 2 situation, to me, Tyson Bagent has separated himself, but you still got a solid rotation there. Brett Ripon is still a solid backup candidate who understands the system, things like that. So I think those are kind of all shored up. There are no position battles in the tight end or wide receivers. We really know who's that going to be. Of course, I talked about yesterday how Colin Johnson, while he had a really good Hall of Fame game, may still be may not make this roster because he just hasn't been healthy, right? So on the offensive side of the ball, we pretty much know most things, right? Like, of course, we have that Ian Willer, Velus Jones, Travis Homer, who's the running back 4 for whatever that's worth, right? Kari Blasingame. I don't really think there's too much of a question there. I mean, yeah, he's the only true fullback on the roster, but even if the Bears do look, which I doubt that they look, I don't think the Bears will look to cut him at all. So those things are kind of all taken care of. You look on the defensive side of the ball. Of course, we're still trying to find that starter, which we just talked about on the opposite end of Montez Sweat. But other than that defensive line's locked in. The starting linebacking core is locked in. The starting secondary is locked in. So it really just becomes about who steps up, right? And who earns that last spot on the roster. Reddy Stewart is another guy to look at of, does he earn a spot in a secondary that's extremely, extremely deep, right? That's a extremely deep secondary there overall. And I think the Bears are going to be trying to blitz some from the secondary in this game, and that's what they should do. But so there's not a lot of true position battles really left for this team. And it's more about depth pieces, about guys who can still make the roster, things like that. Like I mentioned, Reddy Stewart's definitely one of them, in my opinion, that we're looking at to see if he's going to make that final roster. The Micah Baskerville is another one that we're looking at to see what does he do in this final preseason game to continue to separate himself, because he separated himself not only because of his performance on the field, but also because Noah Sewell just ain't been healthy, and he hasn't been healthy for the most part of his NFL career so far. He just hasn't been healthy, and we've seen it before. If you can't stay healthy, regardless of what your potential is, eventually the potential ain't going to be enough if you're not bringing something on the football field. And Sewell, who's already a player who kind of would have had to make a name for himself kind of on special teams first, it just comes down to that, I think, for it. So, we'll continue to take a look at it, right? But, just to see who continues to bring it. Does Austin Booker and Daniel Hardy? Hell, does Dominique Robinson show some signs of life that maybe he still should be in the consideration for this? There's some doubt all around that, right? And so ultimately, like, this Bears team, the thing that I'm looking for the most, more than anything, more than the backup quarterback position or anything, is just continue to seeing the edge that this team has. And we've seen that, not the edge position, but the edge that this team plays with, right? There's been a lot, even when the starters haven't been in there on that defense, the starters have been, the backups have played extremely well over the course of that, given a lot of food for thought on just how dominant this defense could be, because we're bringing intensity both in the starting lineup and coming off that bench. But overarchingly, man, we're just looking at this team, and the thing that I want more than anything that I want from this team is just stay healthy. Like, I don't care who it is. At this point, I want everybody to stay healthy for this team. I don't want to have any big major questions or anything about health concerns or whatever is going to be going into the team. Walk away from this game with no injuries. There's no reason for anybody to, hopefully, knock on wood, get hurt in this game. We want to just walk away from this game and just, yeah, we want to see the Bears play solidly against the Chiefs and all that type of thing. But at the end of the day, just make it out healthy, right? I don't want anything like I don't want, for example, Ian Willer to get cut on the team just because of health, like he gets hurt in the last game or something. But overall, like still looking at how that aggressiveness is from the offense. Still Shane Waldron's offensive play calling, that depth on that defensive line. Because listen, Eric Washington rotates that defensive line in and out consistently, so you're still going to see a lot of faces on that defensive line. So we still want to see that, but there's still players that are on this roster bubble. Greg Stroman Jr. is probably one of those players as well that you can list there with some of the growth and development from other players that you can still look at and say, like, he's behind Tyreek Stevenson, he's behind Jalen Johnson, he's behind Kyler Gordon, Terrell Smith's ahead of him, right? Like, Jalen Jones, right? Like, again, Stroman Jr.'s played really good. He played 150 snaps last year, 130 of those he was in the slot. But you look at now with Josh Blackwell and things like that, there's still a chance that, hey, Greg Stroman Jr. could end up being one of the odd men out when it comes down to it. So still looking at him. He's going to get a lot of opportunity in this game as well. Bayless, who we've already talked about, I think he's going to get a handful of carries in this game, especially in the second half of this game. You can't overlook that. So I think that, Bayless, as much as some people don't agree with me that Bayless Jones could be one of those players that are on the bubble, I think that he is. And we'll see what comes down with that one. And then Jake Curran. Don't overlook Kieran at all here. And the reason why I said that, and yesterday I've talked a lot about J. Tyree Carter and Larry Bourne. And if Jake Kieran passes one of those guys, then fine, he's good. But if he does not, and they look at those guys who've already been with the Chicago Bears team for a while that could have the inside edge, there's a possibility. Now, Jake Kieran has tons of experience in Shane Waldron's offense, which could separate him some as well in that. But you got the wild card in a lot of this with the offensive line as well is Kieran Amaj, who we're gonna finish the show talking a little bit about Kieran there for a second. So looking out for that. And other than that, everything's pretty straightforward. And let me know what you guys though. What are you most excited about? I'm looking for this offense, how they execute. Khalil Herbert. I doubt we see Roshan, so that's going to leave Bayless Jones, Ian Willer to play a lot in this. Continue, Tommy Swan and things like that. So we're still looking at those players. Does Colin Johnson get back in this game, right? Those type of things. But overall, just make it out this game healthy. Make it out the game healthy. Now, I said we were going to finish on some things about Kieran Amaj, and we got some kind of words from Ryan Poles in regards to Kieran Amaj saying this, that he's happy with the way that the training staff has handled the lineman, and they made sure not to rush him back. And Kieran Amaj was trying to get back as quick as possible as well. That he says that Kieran Amaj is fully healthy, and that next they're going to be trying to knock the rust off, but that they do think that he's going to be getting into games soon. They don't know when he's going to get into games yet. They're looking at when that rust comes off, but he is going to be getting into games. And so that's the question that was there, right? That I had personally is Kieran Amaj going to get some actual burn in his rookie year? And it seems like he could. And if that's the case, Kieran Amaj, who's a tackle who can play some guard as well, that if there's any injuries in there, they're going to be looking to get Kieran Amaj some work. And so that's one thing that I do love about this team, and I've said that a lot over the last few years, is that they're not afraid to give some young guys opportunities to earn a role. When you look at Tevin Jenkins, when you look at Nate Davis, when you just look at some of the health concerns that are up and down this roster, getting to see what Kieran Amaj brings to that table, that size, the athleticism that he brings, all in rawness, much like Austin Booker, still a very raw player, but make no mistake about it, I think they got Kieran Amaj with the hopes that he was eventually going to turn into a starting caliber offensive lineman for them. So if they're able to get him a little bit of burn in this rookie season, I do think that is probably the best case scenario that the Bears could hope for, is that they get to take a look at. Again, everything's not going to be perfect. There's going to be some rust there. There's going to be some growing pains there as well, as it is for a lot of offensive lineman rookies. So listen, I think this is a very promising thing. Yeah, and that's the biggest thing that you want to look for in bringing in a young guy who has some things to be proven and stuff like that. You want that. So let's see what that brings about, man. I think overall, when you look at it, yeah, that's really it, man. And I hope that Kieran Amaj is able to play some for the Bears this season, and I hope he's able to be productive. But outside of that, like some things to look at. Do the Bears finish the preseason undefeated? Will the Bears finish this? And even if they do, what does it matter? Nothing. I'm telling y'all right now. I know that'll be a little thing in the hat for Bears fans to talk about our team finishing the preseason undefeated, but it really doesn't mean anything if we do. It's all about when those lights, because it's a different season when the regular season starts, and can we perform at the level that we need to when that regular season starts? And then as far as that, players that are still competing for starting spots, who we've talked about, Austin Booker, Daniel Hardy, those type of guys, what do they show? And I'll say this, Nate Davis as well. If Matt Pryor or anybody else shows some things, Nate Davis needs to be a little worried about it when it comes down to it. DeMarcus Walker, I guess he's the one that we're looking at. Austin Booker, Daniel Hardy taking potentially his starting spot. But then again, I don't really look at that as demotion, because then he goes back to kind of the things that make him, the strongest at playing inside and outside, maintaining that versatility as well that he has there. And then, yeah, Bayless Jones, Ian Wheeler, probably the biggest two there. Colin Johnson, Dante Pettis, Webster as well. They're kind of fighting for that last wide receiver spot on this roster. And then it comes down to, because now that you look at Austin Booker and Daniel Hardy, to me, are now competing for starting spots. They're not competing to see who's going to stay on the roster. When you look at who's going to stay on that roster, Dominique Robinson, Jacob Martin, Khalid Kareem, these are the three guys that are really fighting to try to stay on this roster, at least in my opinion. Now, I do think that there's a chance of Dominique Robinson is cut, that he could end up on the practice squad, maybe. I thought that of Daniel Hardy, that if he was the guy who ends up being cut, that he could end up on the practice squad. But ultimately, I guess we'll see what comes down to that. And then there's no more quarterback controversy to me. To me, it's Tyson Bates your QB2, Brett Ripen your QB3. Austin Reed's probably going to end up on that practice squad. Again, a guy who they drafted because he understands and can kind of fit into Shane Waldron's system. But I think that that's kind of how things are going to shake out. I really don't see too many surprises in store for the Bears at those key things. But as I've said before many times, where do things have happened? Where do things continue to happen? So we'll see what happens down when it comes down to it, man. But before we go, I do got one voicemail that I want to get in here. And this one's from Big Von.
Chicago Bears Central, what's the word? It's your boy Big Von from the low end, calling to check in with y'all boys. And man, just got done watching that third episode of Hard Knock, and I gotta just say, like, it was a very good decision by the NFL to choose the Chicago Bears to do this Hard Knock series on, and it's also very good for the Chicago Bears. You know, we all know, how the family is, and how our previous regime was, and how our owner is. He's a private person, you know what I'm saying? He's a no-nonsense type person. He don't like to be in the spotlight. He don't like what we got going on, the Bears way, and how we do things. He don't like that being exposed. But I tell you what, this was the best decision ever made for the Chicago Bears. I mean, HBO and NFL Films are just doing a tremendous job on highlighting these guys, highlighting our team, highlighting, the team that from Chicago, we all grew up with and we known to love. We had a lot of rocky seasons for like the past, I want to say decades, to say the least, you know what I mean? We ain't sniffed the promised land since '06. But I tell you what, man, watching this Hard Knock series and watching these guys go to work and seeing how Ryan Poles and our staff and, all our bigwigs go about their business and how they shaping and molding this team for the future. I mean, I'm just enamored, man. I'm in awe. As Chicago Bears fans, come on, y'all, we know. The thing we've been questioning the most is our leaders, our GMs, the people who's at the end of the rim, the people who was calling the shots. We didn't never have faith in them. But now Ryan Poles gives us a reason to believe. I love what Matt Eberflus is doing with the guys, getting those guys ready. And I believe he's growing two guys like Haize alluded to in the last episode. Matt Eberflus is taking a step with his team, and I love to see it. Ryan Poles is a guy who want to get the job done, and he don't mind taking risks. So it's just beautiful to see. It was cool having a little Dirk on there, and, cool seeing the guys interacting with each other. But I'll tell you what, we got some dogs out there, y'all, and I'm eager to see what this 53-man roster going to look like. But, that's my time, man. I love y'all boys. CBC up, Chicago up, and bet down, baby. Let's get it.
Listen, I completely agree with most of your thoughts on Hard Knocks there. Like this, I've said it here and on Bleacher Report, it's an unprecedented look at what the Chicago Bears are and how they operate. We don't get insight like this from the Bears usually. We just don't, because the Bears are such a closed-off organization and a team that we just don't get to see them in this light very often. And now that we are, it's special, man. It's really special to be able to see them in this way. And I, for one, commend, just everything. And, having a GM that has that foresight and that vision, that's something that makes this completely different for this team because we aren't used to having that. And now that we do have it, it does feel a little weird, right? It does feel a little different. And so overall, here's the thing. I'm excited to see as well who makes that final 53-man roster. I'm excited to see the episode of Hard Knocks when we get to the cuts, which probably isn't going to be the next episode. It's probably going to be the episode after, but we'll be locked in. So make sure you guys stay locked in with us over the weekend because if any cuts happen, we'll be dropping breaking news videos. We're already expecting to do a live probably Saturday evening on any kind of cuts that happen over the weekend. So stay tuned in for that. We're already live on Sundays as well. But overall, Hard Knocks has been great. I got to give credit to HBO on just the cinematography of it all. That's the cinematography of it all has been very, very special. So, we'll see what happens there. To see Ryan Poles, to see Kevin Warren, even a little bit of Ian Cunningham and things that we get, it's all been very special. And I can't wait to finish out. We're halfway through the season. We got 3 episodes left. I can't wait to see what it brings, man. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you guys are following the show at Shy Bear Central. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. ChicagoBearsCentral@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-242-9336. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bears related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, Chi-Town up, but bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.